This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For September 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends On Topic. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. It's Friday. It's the afternoon. It's time for the AV SuperFriends to talk about stuff. So we're here to talk about stuff.
We just did this like last Friday.
We just did this last week, and we'll probably do it again next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. It's what we do on Friday afternoons. Some of us are using this as an excuse to avoid work for an hour or so. Some of us are using this as a break and have to go back to work in an hour. So we'll see how it plays out.
Some of us, this may be the only work they have to do anymore.
Pretty soon, it may be that this is it, and then we're done. But my name is Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Mark. Where'd that screen go?
That's me.
Jamie and Rachel. Sorry, I moved a window and couldn't see anybody.
You can't even remember who's on the call.
I've got too many windows open. I don't know what's going on.
How late in your Friday is it?
It's been one of those days.
I don't know who's here, but we're all here.
Someone's here. Well, hey, to be fair, last week you weren't on video, you were audio only, and I forgot you were there too. Now I can see you, and I still forgot you were there. So
yeah, well, it's because I'm too pretty. It distracts people.
It is.
I'm pretty.
What it is.
Anyway, so today's topic is going to be generically time for change and kind of a reflection on the past 18 months and maybe lessons learned on, when someone comes to us and say, hey, I need 5 new classrooms, or can you help me upgrade my classroom? That means something very different now in 2021, 2022 than it did in 2019. And, it maybe not necessarily different in the technology as much as maybe different in the approach and different in the tasks that are being done in those spaces. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, I have a little bit of AV news I want to get to. This story is actually from yesterday, and it's from the fine folks at Rave Pubs who have got themselves a industry insider who's sending them anonymous letters.
They had a mole somewhere. That was nice.
Really solid. Yeah, this is solid reporting. But so basically, this comes from Rave Pubs, and they've got an email that was sent to them an email that was sent to Rave Pubs, but was sent to this partner of QSC. Announcing that not only are they running into increasing supply chain issues, but they are there are certain products they're just not going to ship. And furthermore, if you back order those products, they're just going to cancel that order or cancel that line item on the order. Now, if you look at the list of products on here, it is specific lines of amplifiers. My guess is these are ones that probably are not in their top-selling processors and amplifiers. I notice there's not a lot of the network-connected ones and things like that. So I suspect what they're doing here is triaging their product line to determine what, based on the supply chain restrictions they're running into, what can they ship and what's more important for them to ship. But this is an interesting approach for a major manufacturer to just come out and be transparent about it. Well, okay, semi-transparent, because this went to distributors and partners, not necessarily to all their customers, but to just say, hey, start telling your customers this. If you're going to order that, you're just not going to be able to get it. Not that it'll be October, November, December. Just no, this just isn't happening for the foreseeable future. What do y'all think about this? Is this the way forward? Is this a better way for manufacturers to address the kind of ongoing supply chain weirdness, or is there another approach people should be taking?
I have two different opinions on this. One, is it really transparent? Because it's not public. I mean, it is
transparent
now.
To their partners, yes.
Yeah, to the partner. But QSC did not do a press release and say, "Hey, by the way, public at large, where you can't get these things." So I think it is refreshing to see it, but I don't know if we were supposed to see it in the way that we did. But I wish more manufacturers just be straight up clear, like, "Hey, you can't get this. We can't get it, so don't ask." And we'll let you know again when we do have it, because it's not right now.
I agree. I think we've reached, and Rachel's going to slap me in a minute. Right, you ready? Back in my day, when I went through my public relation courses in college, which I never practiced professionally, so take it for what it's worth.
Only amateurly? Amateur public relations?
Yeah, amateur. I was really good at it. No. But one of the things they said, sometimes it's just better just to come out and just be truthful. Mm-hmm. Right? Just get it out there. Just say, you know what? Here's the situation. We're doing everything we can to take care of you. Please be patient with us, but this is the deal. And sometimes bad news is the same thing. Like, yeah, we screwed up, and move on, right? But in this case, I wish more of the manufacturers just say, look, we all know there's a supply shortage. We all know that. And here's what we're trying to do to mitigate it. And if we have to shut down these product lines for a short period of time in order to keep shipping these other ones, because I imagine that's what's happening here.
I think that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
I just wish more would do that, because we're just throwing orders in going, we got money, we got money, we got money. And then we're finding out that a thing that was supposed to be shipped in July is pushed to October, is pushed to November. And it's just been nice to know, because chances are that same device, no matter what company I try to order it from, it's going to be back ordered.
Right.
That's the chance. So
because
just come out and tell us.
they're all dealing with the same supply chain issues. I agree with that entirely, Jamie. I would even take the sometimes out. I think it is always better to just tell the truth, as much of it as you can. You can't always tell all of it. There are sometimes reasons why, you have to keep some things closer to the vest, but you should always be as transparent as you can be, especially in crisis communications. Sorry for the shameless plug here, guys, but it's relevant. My colleague, Olivia Selke, just wrote an article for the Castor Communications blog, which you can all go read right now, about the 3 pillars of crisis communications. And it talks about exactly this. You acknowledge the problem, you tell people what you're trying to do to fix the problem, and you communicate to them why they should trust you to fix the problem. And I think that in this communication from QSC to their distributors, they've done a pretty good job of that. I think that the transparency that they're displaying to their dealers and distributors does do a decent job of communicating why they should be trusted, because they are sort of alone out there being honest about what's going on. And that will communicate that you can rely on them to continue to be honest in the future. I think that this is, again, I'm cribbing from Olivia's blog. It's excellent. You should read it. But
I'll put the link in the description for people.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Chris. But one of the things she talks about is that if you wait until you've already put your customers in a bad position by back ordering their items for months and months and months, and they're asking you what's going on, and then you sort of sheepishly come out with, supply chain issues, that makes you look reactive. It puts you on the defensive. They've been proactive in their communications, which is going to put them in a better position communicating with their customers going forward. And it's going to put their customers in a better position managing up to their stakeholders to set expectations properly.
See, and I think this whole conversation, it sparks this little question in the back of my head. And since people listening, we assume that you're probably somewhere in higher education, or at least we angle ourselves there somehow. I know people in this room talking now are in higher education, but there's kind of this experience that I've had of late. In the commercial world or wherever non-higher education, if I go out in society and try to buy anything that they don't have on the shelf right now, it's pretty much normal. Like, no, we don't have it, and we may not get it. Now, within the confines of the university context, I have instructors, people, deans, whoever, making requests, service requests. And I tell them, I can't get this. I physically cannot get it. But the expectation is still that I'm going to somehow magically do it. And and it's weird. So I'm asking you, Rachel, what is there, is it commercially okay, but in this privatized world of higher education, where's the experiential difference fall? I mean, maybe it's just that higher ed is just a different animal altogether. But I know that when I tell somebody that there's back orders until October and November, December, whatever it is, they don't seem to care or acknowledge that at all. And I'd imagine, Chris, you probably have a bit of this. Jamie, I'm sure you've seen it now in their frustrations with classes beginning all around the country. There's this heightened level of urgency in no slack being given whatsoever. And then I think as this show being the change, is this a new thing or is this an old, what's going on here with this kind of thing that we're seeing?
Well, look, I can't speak for the whole commercial AV industry, and if we have any users that feel like they can, please write in. We'll have you on to talk about this. But my opinion is that this is kind of particular to higher ed. Like in higher ed, there are certainly VIPs in the commercial AV world that have unreasonable expectations that everybody bends over backwards to meet, that get to do everything differently, that don't have to use the standard set, and who can, just wish non-existent stock into reality. But I think a key difference between the commercial world and the higher ed world is that the supply chain issues, the larger issues that are affecting the manufacturers, are also affecting a lot of their customers, and their operations are scaled back too. So if they have to delay their AV project developments for a little bit while gear is back ordered, that's probably okay. It's maybe even more than okay from a financial standpoint right now. But higher education does not have that luxury. Operations are not scaled back at all. If anything, technology development operations have increased in order to meet the needs of hybrid and remote students. So we can look and see, like, we can recognize that the stock isn't there, but that doesn't make the need
still exists. Yeah. And I get it, but outside, like, we own that, like, I can't get this. Like, I ordered a refrigerator back in like April. It just showed up like at the warehouse yesterday. And like, I knew it. I wasn't going to get this refrigerator for 4 months or whatever it was.
By the way, Mark, all the stuff in your old refrigerator has been spoiled.
Yeah, I know. I'm not even looking at that. I'm just going to give it away, and then somebody can have all that. That's fine.
That chicken has gone bad.
Well, the milk is now cheese, so go ahead,
it's
put
just
your
a
sandwich.
slow process.
Yogurt.
I hate when I get milk stuck in my teeth.
But see, I don't even think that it's a. I don't think it's a modern thing. I've noticed this over the years, right? That there's this, I guess, lack of patience sometimes in higher ed. It's as correct as I'm going to get. And sometimes I do believe it's because it's not their pocket. It's not their pocketbook, right? And I see this, and my analogy, comes from sports, is that, like, when I coach recreation teams, the just for fun, the parents just want their kids active teams are the hardest parents to please ever. The ones forking out money for the club level, they're much easier to deal with. And I wonder if in higher ed
the service you're providing.
And I wonder if in higher ed it's a little bit of that, is that ultimately the end client, the end user, didn't have to, they just know it affects their job. Mm-hmm. And I think right now, what exasperates the whole thing is that their job has changed. So it's not one or two projects that we're having to kind of tiptoe around. It's the entire university. So no matter how, because we all on this show have discussed about how well we thought we were prepared for this, even though we didn't know this was happening. And still, just the change in the behaviors and the change in expectations and that raise in stress, I'm seeing it all over. Like, well, what do you mean I can't do this thing? I've been in this room for 30 years and it's wonderful. Yeah, but so I wonder, I think that's part of it. It's that, remember we talked about the suitcase factor? Like, the university trusts the person, that salesman from the street, because they have a briefcase. Mm-hmm. But we're just as good as an expert. And now I think it's reverse. I mean, is some of it like, maybe, well, you're here, so they take you for granted.
Are we victims of maybe our own success, or is that like, am I just somehow dreaming that up? Like, we've done magic in the past, and is this part of that?
What I can see from...
Why can't you still do magic?
What I'm seeing from having just started at a new institution 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, is that there's the inherent stress of classes starting, and especially any of the requests coming from line teaching faculty. They've got their own classes to worry about and their own students. Anyone doing research, they've got that going on to justify impending or threatened budget cuts. And then administrators who have to deal with all that pushing up to them. But on top of all of that is coming from the institution itself. There's a schedule that's laid out for years in advance. Classes start on this day. Registration is on this day. The break is on this day. Finals are on this day. That doesn't move. And when it does shift, it's like an act of Congress for it to happen. So I think that that's inherent in all this discussion. So Mark, to your question, I think that that's why we get that kind of, but I need it now. Well, because the calendar says this, And we have to. In fact, at IU was interesting. They had I think it was a 9-year calendar kind of mapped out because they needed to plan out that far ahead, and it was neat to use that for reference for future projects. But once you're on the boots on the ground, starting a new semester. I'm getting a lot of requests now of people who haven't been here on campus saying, hey, I thought every room on campus was supposed to have all this Zoom stuff. It's like, well, no, the general inventory classrooms all have that Zoom stuff. Well, I need it in my classroom. Okay, great. And here's what it'll cost and here's what we can do. Can you get that in there by tomorrow? And it's kind of like whether there's miscommunication there to our earlier comment or whether they just didn't think about it until now or just assumed or whatever it is. But they still have a class tomorrow morning at 9:30. So,
but where in society can you get something tomorrow?
Well, I can go to Best Buy and get whatever they got. But you're right. If I go to Best Buy to buy a television, they say, you like this television? It's great. I'll get it to her in 6 weeks. You're like, all right. But yes, if I need it tomorrow,
and nobody
for
listening
work,
say Amazon. I know you're all saying Amazon. That doesn't count. That's not what I'm talking about.
Also, even Amazon is victim to these supply chain issues right now. Like you can't. That not only does not count, it doesn't work.
It's not installed. A box of stuff sitting here doesn't do you any good. Like
and you can't even get the box. So
that people can be patient because I know people have been waiting for because we have the Ford truck assembly line right down the road, right? And there have been people that ordered 18 months ago. By the time they get their brand new car, they're brand new off the inventory 2020 Ford F-150.
Yeah.
It's 2022. Mm-hmm. Like you just bought a brand new off the line 2-year-old truck, model, right? And they're patient. They're like, hey, I put my deposit down. I'm ready to go. Like, once they told me it may be 2 years, I might put that deposit back in the bank and wait until I can get it. So people are willing to be patient for the product.
But I think that's a different sort of scenario when you talk about somebody buying a new car because presumably they have an existing car. I'll wait for that one, but I'll keep driving my old one sort of thing. But in a classroom, that doesn't really work. It's like, I'll wait for the new classroom because I've still got the old classroom. Like, no, make this one the new one now. And, it adds pressure. And then especially when they play hey, this is for, the dean's conference room. It's like, well, okay, it's still going to be 8 weeks.
I'm curious to the listeners, is this ubiquitous? Is this a higher ed thing? Like, let us know. Please email us and let us know what you are seeing, because I'm really curious. Is it just enclaves around the country where we see this, or if you work for any university or any college in this country or around the world, is this a common experience? Is this part of this, this normalcy or whatever it may be, or am I just completely wrong? Because I'm okay if I'm completely wrong.
Every college across the country is administrated by Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Seems right.
So you're saying if we turn people into giant blueberries? No, wait, that was the other guy.
No. She's the bad egg. Mm-hmm. I want
she's
the world.
One who got sorted.
I want the whole world.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That one.
Who was the blueberry?
That was Violet. Violet, you're turning violet. Violet.
It's been a while since I've seen Gene Wilder sing about imagination. So.
Well, that's your loss.
But yeah, that's a good point.
If
you guys
almost as creepy as any horror movie ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the scene with the tunnel, nightmares. Is this an on-topic show? Moving on.
Not anymore. So, yes. If you're out there listening and you're experiencing similar things or you're experiencing something different, like, hey, actually at our university, this is how it works and it's been great.
I want to know how you trained your community at large to get them that way, where they're
maybe a cultural thing. It's hard to say. So, but in the meantime, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about our classrooms of the future in the future.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. If you'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV Super Friends, then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
So the topic du jour is time for change, but kind of the way we interpret that is how have the last 18 months or so informed the decisions that we make when we need to design a new AV space. And again, maybe not from the standpoint of technology, but maybe from the tasks that are going on in that space are now not necessarily dramatically, but they're certainly different than they would have been 2 years ago, because we would assume, oh, I have somebody standing over here and got some students working in this group over there, and I need some audio reinforcement, and we're good. But now it's a little bit different, because we're kind of thinking that the at least in my initial thought is, the item that was always kind of an add-on, like, oh yeah, and if we have the availability and the budget and that, we'll do some video conference capability and some beamforming mics and all that fun stuff. But now it's like, no, that's where we start, because we need that in a new space to start from, because that's going to be requisite. So I guess the question is, if we're thinking of, and a question for the panel here, but if we're thinking of a job description of a classroom, so, Mark, I think you phrased this as this will be a successful space if, how would we do that now, based on everything we've been through the last 18 months versus how we would have done that, say, 2 years ago?
I think it's definitely the design and delivery now to be successful must extend beyond the four walls of the immediate space, right? I think that's just our standard scope now. It's like, okay, I have to get out of this space, where that, like you said, was a premium or alternate option or whatever it was in the past, has become the boilerplate. Like, everything is this unless you can prove it does not need it, and be very specific and give me 10 examples as to why you don't need it. But the classroom extends beyond the four walls, and so all the accoutrements for that must be in place, right? And that changes our standards, because now we're holding those pieces. And so my guess is a lot of people listening probably have a similar philosophy moving at this time, but again, I may be wrong. Jamie, what do you think? Do you think, is your standard now, like, yeah, we have some level of camera and microphone, at least, to get outbound? Let's talk about, do you deploy all student microphones in all your spaces, or is it just the instructor getting outbound? And
yeah, I think that's the one change.
And I do want to jump in here and say, this is for if you're designing spaces in the future. Jamie, I need 8 new classrooms for a building next year. Mm-hmm. So now where do you start with that?
Yeah, and I think for me personally, most of this other stuff, at least an instructor camera, at least a DSP that's able to deal with USB capture for all this stuff, that has been in my repertoire for a long time. Like Mark said, I would sit in meetings and they would have to expressly forbid me from purchasing those items. They didn't really get a choice. And a lot of it was, and the easiest way was, we just simply don't have the money, and I'll find a way to put it in there, but you need this. Where before it was a conversation, and now I think I don't have to have that argument anymore.
And maybe that's the endpoint stuff, though. So now if you didn't have it and there was no money, would you always, no matter what, plumb for it, at least at a bare minimum?
Yes. I tried to. I attempted to every time. I think the one change, the one that I did not anticipate I would have as much pushback on, is student microphones. And the one thing that's getting me in that regards that affects me the most right now is that the instructors are so used to voice lift that when they find out there are student microphones, and typically, let's face it, we're all putting in these beamforming ceiling things because 1-to-1 microphones are, 1, expensive, 2, difficult to deploy, and 3, ugly. So we've been putting in these other things, right? They work great, but unfortunately, to work great, it has to have all those other options too. So we put in these things, and they really get upset. They're like, well, the students can't hear themselves. And and I'm like, well, okay, I'll turn them on once, right? So you turn them on once, it makes their ears bleed, and then they understand why it's not a great idea. And so, but I think that's the one change, going back to the classroom thing, that I am now deploying as part of my, quote, standard package, is audience participation microphones that I used to never do before. Just now, technology's helped a lot. Let's face it, the new DSPs, the new technology for these microphones makes this so much easier than it used to be. I remember 5-6 years ago, putting in ceiling mics was a horrible experience. Now it's second nature, so let's just put them up there.
That's an interesting point. So we're not just planning. Yeah, there's mics in the room. Maybe there's a handheld and a lavalier or something. Now it's like, no. There's mics in the entire room. Just because you need that. The student in the back asking the question has to be heard on the recording, has to be heard on the stream, has to be heard by people remotely, just as well as a person standing up front with a lavalier clipped to their shirt. So that's a good point.
The other thing,
the one
that
I am
go
looking
ahead,
at,
Jamie.
the other thing that I'm looking at, we haven't deployed, you guys have, is the whiteboard camera system, the whiteboard capture thing. I have some. They just came in. I just haven't done it yet. But that is the other device that I think from here going forward, I will attempt to shoehorn into this to give the instructor the appearance of what they're used to, a whiteboard. And they still get to display it on their outside the classroom, whatever it is, stream. But those are the two things. I think everything else, I mean, even when Chris was here, we worked really hard to forward think, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job at that. Now I just don't have to fight for those, quote, extras. People just expect them, so they don't even fight anymore.
The other thing that I'm hearing from some of my clients is that they're getting requests from higher ed clients to have everything be network manageable, to have all the peripherals that can be on the network so that they don't have to roll carts for absolutely everything, and that they can manage things from a distance.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think we've started networking everything. I think most people, just from a management perspective. Back to that whiteboard camera thing, because I think when we did our camera deployment, right, and we didn't do it to capture just an instructor like at the front of the room, right? That was not really, we knew it was like this weird Swiss Army knife deployment where it was like we want to configure them to be able to at least see the chalkboards and whiteboards and the like. At the same time, we also had every room with a document camera, right, that was connected via USB and also part of the switching systems. And so where I'm kind of going with this is we had these non-traditional no-front rooms where our instructors are already trained to need to use that document camera. And I'm wondering if there's any contingency of folks out there that have that similar experience where we don't have real fronts of rooms anymore, and the experience really is the document camera. Because I think that whiteboard chalkboard thing is kind of a little bit of a dinosaur in some way, because I know we know kind of furthest viewer and correct size, and none of that applies. If Justin was here, he'd be screaming about things that they do or do not do well at Western Kentucky with sizing of boards. But I would say there's probably a lot of universities that deployed a lot of document cameras just for that reason, to kind of get that texted and kind of handwritten thing to the outbound world.
You bring up a good point there. So I would almost go so far as to think if I'm talking about a standard classroom, if I'm standing in just a basic four walls, sage on the stage, as much as we're trying to get away from that, they still exist by the tens of thousands. There are rooms that have 40 seats and a lectern and whiteboards or chalkboards across the front and a projection screen, that sort of thing. In that case, you could almost make the argument, the opposite of what you said there, Mark, and put in cameras on the writable surfaces on the front and not a document camera.
Sure,
you could
certainly
almost toss that. But you're right. As we increasingly, or let me be careful about phrasing this, as we increasingly explore alternative classroom layouts, because I think as much as a lot of us want to try this, because I've got 400 of these spaces out there, and if 20 of them are different, I'm more interested to go play around in those than I am in the 400 that are the same. But as people who are teaching their classes, those same kind of sage on the stage standard rooms are what they're used to. That's a comfort zone, so they want that, and that's where I think those whiteboard cameras come into play. So maybe it's not an either or, maybe it's not a you get both all the time or you get one or the other sort of thing. But you're right. In certain spaces, it doesn't make any sense to have whiteboard cameras, or you have a whole bunch of them, because that's the other thing. And especially in active learning spaces, you don't have a wall of writable surfaces. You have little 4-foot segments of them around the room for the students to work in groups. Well, do I need to get a camera on every one of those? And now my cost just went through the roof, sort of thing. But the document camera is a relatively easy, hey, here's this thing. It cost me a couple $100. I put it down. It's got USB into the computer. Boom. You got a beautiful picture straight into whatever software you're using. If you're capturing that, you're streaming that, whatever, it's in there. It's done. The biggest issue is not technology. It's like you said, it's having to train and work with faculty so they understand you have to use this writable surface. And yes, it's much smaller, especially if you're used to going all the way across the chalkboards across the room. But it's something that's going to capture and look great for people online. In fact, I just had a ticket about this on Monday morning. Somebody said, I need to figure out how to get my whiteboard into Zoom. And so all the people from the help desk were trying to help out about, oh, you aim the camera and do this. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Go show them the document camera. Tell them to use that. And they said, well, they don't like the document camera. I said, I understand that. Tell them, because it's true, people online are not going to be able to read your whatever you're writing on the board if you just try to zoom the camera. Now, luckily, this room did have an actual PTZ camera, but they can zoom it in, but it's only going to work so well. And they're going to have to constantly be moving it around and such sort of thing. So it's one more thing for them to manage that they don't want to deal with. And if they can agree to shift their paradigm to, I'm going to write on this 10 by 10 little space on a notepad, it'll look great for people in the room and people online. And it's a task change, but from a technology standpoint, it's stuff we've been deploying for years. So, maybe that's something that we need to think about, is like, that is now not just an add-on. And, oh, by the way, if you bring in something, you can put it down here and people can see it. It's like, no, this is a critical element, whether that's a whiteboard camera that captures the whiteboard or the chalkboard, or a document camera, which captures what they're doing right here on a writable surface. That's a critical element to teaching in these mixed modal environments. And, that's not necessarily a technology change, but it is a different task that they're doing in the space that is absolutely necessary in 2022.
I think one of the pieces that we're seeing is the importance of a standard configuration, right? In that, with all of this new remote teaching and the whatever you want to coin it as, insert that word here, but the support desk pieces of that, right? So the people who are there to actually support, like being very intentional with your product choices, because it needs to tie into a centralized support space of some sort. And that kind of really leans heavy on not having all these boutique spaces around there, because this common experience, whether it's some people in a room, some people at home, how are you supporting that? So I think there's this hyper sensitivity to like not deploying rogue things that are going to create support nightmares. So to me, it was very refreshing for people to see things in that light moving it forward, is like, hey, we're not going to do something that we know is not a standard. And I think there's real awareness now that our standards need to be robust and they need to be mature and deliver all these things at the same time, but in a supportable way. And to me, I think that's worth its weight in gold.
Rolling back to
ahead.
this idea of supply chain issues, you brought up standards. I know you're talking about classroom standards, but it does make me wonder whether you're being intentional about building those classroom standards out of interchangeable components, things that use really common standards, open standards where possible, so that if a device becomes unavailable, you can replace it with a compatible available device.
Yeah, I think so. I think we, many folks on this group, we speak about it in a lot of our sessions where it's, don't do some weird thing and build around like your infrastructure around some weird transport. Like, try to find something that's standardized at some level, because just what you said, when something fails, like, what can I put in there that can move the same way and provide a solution and not be some boutique weird support problem that, to extend not just from the endpoint, but the infrastructure, right? Having a mature view of what that infrastructure needs to be, not only today, but tomorrow and 10 years and whatever Chris's classroom building in the future will be.
And so, Mark, you just said something there that we haven't talked about yet. It's infrastructure. So do you guys think that infrastructure we need to dramatically, are we just now designing around the infrastructure that we always wish we would use, but now we're able to probably get that?
I think it's more acknowledged that, there's going to be some category cable everywhere, and just I'll take it and let's get it to and fro. And the concept of point to point it seems to be a little more relevant now than there used to be.
Yeah, I no longer need one network port here. I need four. Yeah. And then when they say why, it's because of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's more acceptable. It's like, oh yeah, you're doing over category cable, and that's so the extension thing, right? I think the extension market has become much more mature, and I think we can reliably do more of those in our different classrooms, and to bring in all these extra endpoints and bring them back to a common location.
And if we go, if we wrap this up into that what is the quote job description of a classroom? Boy, what we just described does to me read like the typical job description right now. If you're going to go to Indeed or one of the LinkedIn or something for the website, it's kind of like, we wish for the classroom to be a standardized user experience that is easy yet adaptable to the needs of the present situation. Right? It's like we want it to always be the same, except that when it breaks, it needs to be adaptable to the present situation.
Well, that's
which is
under
what
the
we
other
basically
duties as
described.
assigned.
Right.
Yeah, the other duties as assigned, because we want it to be repeatable. We want everybody to be comfortable. We want it to do Sage on the Stage and whatever else. We want it to be in person and not. We want it to be adaptable enough so that if this little widget breaks and it's out of date, no worries. The cable's the same. We just put in this other little widget, does the same deal. And I think what's boring for us on this call, on this show, is that we all have, I think we've strived to do these things. I just hope that this job description of the classroom kind of helps those other folks to be like, yeah, it is all of that. And the salary's low.
Yeah, you do it for nothing. But I think the
Entry
piece-
level position, 3 years of experience required.
and a master's.
Master's degree.
I think the one thing that I will acknowledge is that I think going through what we've been through and in all the new rooms out there, it feels like maybe, just maybe, the users are actually at a different level than they were maybe 36 months ago when it came to their technology awareness of what they can and can't do. Because I think we all have for years been saying it'd be nice if we could just get people who actually knew how to use these systems and knew what they could do with them. I think right now we have made it to 2005. We are right there.
I agree. I love the fact that people are using the features I've had in there for a while. And I also love the fact that I now have administrators in my own department going, you really did say that this would happen. Like using this technology, not what happened.
So are you doing amateur virology or something in your backyard? Is that what's going on here?
Sounds about right.
I'm not allowed to say.
So one other aspect I want to bring up about this, this job description sort of thing is that always defines what the position should be doing, or in this case, what the classroom is going to be doing. And I want to bring up this idea of what are things that are not going to be needed in a classroom of the future sort of thing. And the two that come to mind for me immediately are, and probably an easy one for everybody, is, the Blu-ray player, DVD player, the optical disc physical media player is an easy one to toss. 5-6 years ago, that was like, how I need one of these here. And if you built a room without that, you were running around installing them on day 2 sort of thing. The other one that comes to mind, and this has been I think a recent development in the last, maybe 6 months or so, but it's been solidified in mind since I got here, is the wireless devices, that wireless sharing box thing. Because, well, again, everyone in the past, we've been able to do this for, I remember doing presentations with wireless devices 15, 17 years ago sort of thing. But it was, like Jamie, like you're just talking about, the things that you've always been pushing for, and people are like, we don't need that. And now maybe people are interested. But this is one where we've always been pushing it. Yeah, it's wireless. Look, you can walk around. But it's, it's a worse experience. It's lower resolution or lower quality. But now the issue is, and we brought this up on a previous show, Mark, I think this was your point of, that box doesn't talk to Zoom. And so when I go in and I select on the touch panel and say, do my wireless laptop, boom, there it is. Well, no one can see that online. And that doesn't get streamed or shared or recorded. It's just there captured in the room, or in the room, which is fine 3 or 4 years ago. But now if I had my druthers, I'd go rip every one of those boxes out because it doesn't tie into the larger ecosystem of the outside those 4 walls. And there are ways to do wireless sharing in the room. Hey, start a Zoom call, start a Teams call, and then join it from that device, and there you go. But that doesn't cost anything, nor does it mean an extra device, nor does it mean something else I have to maintain and pay for sort of thing. So that simplifies a lot of things. So in my mind, those two things, that physical optical drive or optical player, that's gone. To just, get rid of it. It's like the VCR of yesterday. And then these dedicated wireless boxes over the next year or two are going to be a thing of the past. You're going to end up with, why do we have a stack of these in the storage room? Because they do exactly what they're supposed to, but they didn't fit within the model of what a classroom is now. What do you guys see on that?
They'll get NDI soon enough, and they'll be ported in there. It'll make it as an input. But I think the broader thing I'm taking away from what you just said, Chris, was that leading up to everything we've gone through, we as an institution we're trying to figure out ways that we could actually remove computers from classrooms, right? We knew there was administrative overheads. Did this, what we went through, just have the big PC come in and just plant their flag and say, no, you're not getting rid of me. I'm staying in here. Because now we have this software as a service that exists and is critical to the day-to-day functions of a classroom, right? Because what you just said, the Zooms, the Teams, all that stuff, everything is going through a software first, where the other previously, it's like you could just come and just have a presentation off your phone. You didn't need to do anything. Like you could just go, right? But now it's so critical to have that enabling service of some type of collaboration software running in the background to even enable a classroom of any kind. And I know we're lightly tiptoeing into that Zoom room, not Zoom room, PC, whatever conversation, but to me that was fascinating. Like we were ready to just get computers out of spaces. And now it's like, well, that's not happening. They're here to stay now.
Yeah, we never really... I always said that if we didn't have a one-to-one campus, then they got to have a computer. As much as I hate some of it, but if the instructor isn't handed a laptop and have the expectation, or students and the expectation that will be their tool, and if you don't have it, tough, it's your problem. You didn't carry your tool with you, kind of like keys, right? But nobody was willing to do that, and so it really wasn't a topic for us. And getting rid of things, I'm with Chris, I guess. We pushed for the wireless thing, the wireless sharing thing, and I think what folks realize is that it's not that convenient. It's really not.
Yeah.
So they kind of quit using it. Now there's certain places where they use the crap out of it, but I think that's the case everywhere, is that there's certain places where it's wonderful. And most places, no. And I think the physical media, it's time to go. Large touchscreens, smart boards, let's call them smart boards, whether it's the more modern ones or not. I can't tell you the last time I spec'd one, and I don't see a place for them. Yeah. Even in the elementary schools, I'm seeing that the teachers, they'd rather do it a billion different ways. So those are the things I don't think I would use anymore.
Super software specific for, actually annotating and or using the product is not real useful at this point.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of the earlier conversation about whiteboards and how hard it is to get people to use document cameras instead. And document cameras, in contrast to something like a smartboard or a wireless dongle, they're a better experience in a lot of ways, but they're different. If you can give people... I always
found that argument weird because you just literally have to write.
I know. I
think
we'd be more successful promoting whiteboard or document cameras if we called them digital overhead projectors. Like maybe they'd get more pickup. But if you give people access to experiences that they're familiar with and they feel comfortable with, and help them not have to access the figuring out how to do things part of their brain while they're also accessing the multimodal, like flight control level complexity of teaching and managing a classroom, then they're far more likely to make good use of those technologies. So in the end, it's pretty intuitive that the technologies that let you use your tablet or your phone or your computer in the way that you're used to, with the user interface options of like mouse and keyboard that you're used to, are the ones that people are typically most successful in using, because they don't have to think about the mechanics of using the technology. They can just teach.
And Rachel, that's an excellent point, and maybe a good way to kind of draw this conversation to a close. But you said that we need to think about design and tasks and experience based on what people are used to doing. And over the last 18 months, people are now used to doing things very differently. That so monitor true. In front of them and the software and everything talking to it has been their window to the outside world. And now they're back in a quote unquote traditional teaching space. It's been modified and can do all these neat new things. Well, there's all this other stuff in there they don't need. There's all these things in there. They're like, well, why are there 5 buttons on this touch panel? I only use 2 of them, and one of which is, power off or whatever. So it starts to raise questions as to when we need to put stuff in a classroom, what is that stuff? is this stuff people are used to using? Is this what they're comfortable using? Or is this what they were used to using or comfortable using 3 years ago, 2 years ago? And now, with this focus on, I think, this PC-centric world, because, Mark, like you said, people are like, well, we're going to get rid of all PCs. Wait, no, we need those, because that was the thing that at least everything talked to, and that's going to inform how the spaces are used. So, well, lots more on that to come. So get rid of your Blu-ray players, get rid of your DVD players.
VGA, it's coming back.
Yeah, we're going all VGA. We'll figure
Analog
it out next time.
Sunrise.
It's back. Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV Super Friends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.